And for more on this situation out of Florida, let's bring in former special agent in charge for the ATF, Bernard Zapor, and former Navy SEAL and former FBI agent Jonathan Gilliam. Welcome to both of you. Jonathan, I'm going to start with you here. Obviously, as John Huddy was pointing out, this is a situation where information is changing every moment, so you don't want to make any assumptions. You don't want to jump to conclusions, but we are learning again, 5 dead, 4 injured. It does seem like there were 2 shooters. One has been, I believe, neutralized. The other is in custody. So just based on what you're hearing, what does this lead you and your investigative mind to surmise potentially happened?
Well, it's not a personal attack. So in other words, you don't have a beef between 2 people or a couple people, so somebody went in there and shot something up. That happens sometimes. I think we can rule that out, or at least put that to the side. The fact that there's 2 people involved means that this is a coordinated attack and there's an agenda that is going on here. And so that leads to the potential that there's even more individuals that are included, because typically what you see is 2 people can get together and do something like this. That's actually somewhat common in these types of shootings. But for multiple people to be engaged in something like this is a much bigger deal, because that takes much more coordination and means that there's a wider ideological base to what they're doing. So this has already gone beyond just 2 people who are angry, or 1 person that's angry at some people. This is a coordinated attack between 2 individuals. So law enforcement has to treat this as though this could widen into something even bigger. The fact that they also hit and killed, at least that we know of, 5 people and other people injured, means that they were moving to kill or injure more than just a specific person. So this is how law enforcement is looking at this. So as they move through this campus and clear these places, they have to remember now that 2 people were involved. So they have to, that really puts them on guard now to look and consider the fact that there may be more people out there. And then also the city has to realize this, because it's been the case where shooters have left and then went and continued to kill throughout as they drove around the city that they were at. And if this is more of a coordinated attack, that's something that could happen. These are things we have to think about, law enforcement has to consider.
Absolutely, and that's why right now the continue to shelter in place is still in effect. I'm looking at the Florida State website, or on X right now. Everyone is advised to stay put until law enforcement gets to them. Bernard, talk about that. I mean, obviously the campus is massive. It's a huge school. There's a lot of buildings to go through. Yet we already have allegedly 2 shooters here. They've got to make sure there's not more. To Jonathan's point, this seems to be a wider net.
It's a massive tactical challenge, because they have to secure every space for the potential of there being more. And that's going to take them some time. You know, one thing that's great to note here is the amount of time it took law enforcement to respond and stop the shooting, because this is improving over time generally, nationally, in how we respond to mass casualty events, with the exception of another Florida one that was notoriously bad. There is no waiting for a tactical team or a decision for a command post. Whoever gets there first has to engage whatever known shooters there are. The follow-up is to find others. And as Jonathan pointed out, the conspiratorial aspects of this are daunting, because there's going to be that much more challenge in the region, the proximity, and particularly this campus, because as we've seen in other shooters, people that are involved can blend in with the evacuation. The fact that there's more than 1 person involved here, I would guess very strongly that within the coming hours, they're going to know a lot about the shooters and the people they associated with. There's probably a lot of breadcrumbs that lead to what they were doing and other people they were involved in. But right now, it's the enormity of the tactical problem to make sure the campus is safe and the area is safe.
Yeah, Bernard, again, to that point, as you said, it won't take long before law enforcement likely knows everything there is to know about these 2 alleged shooters. What types of things do investigators use to track those things down so quickly? I'm guessing social media is probably part of it.
Yes, well, you know, there's so many metrics that identify us as individuals now that we have an electric and a digital life that is very hard to conceal, and they'll have access to that immediately. The other thing is, If you look in retrospect at mass casualty events, whether it's a single shooter or in this case, people working together in collusion, there's a amount of narcissism and ego that goes with it. There's either an attributed anger, an ideology, whatever it is, they probably broadcasted something in some way, either to each other or personal messaging, but it's going to reveal a lot. And I think in the coming days, if not sooner, there'll be some ideal as to motive and intent. In addition, and of course, these things are going on simultaneously. As they're clearing this campus and the area, you have the investigations already started, obviously, and care for the victims and care for the responders who've been engaged in this firefight, essentially, to resolve the immediate threat.
Jonathan, what do you think about potentially, and you were talking about this, even more involved? It appears to have two shooters with this tragedy here. The likelihood of those two not broadcasting or putting something on social media, to Katrina's point, as they go to try and track down what exactly led up to this. What do you think we're going to find?
Well, it's the fact that they have an individual, if they can identify either one of these individuals, but they have somebody who's alive that's one of the shooters. That is a huge thing, because the quicker they can identify them, the faster all these texts we have. In law enforcement now, it's not just about people being able to run to the sound of the guns. It's also about the tech people who can quickly access these accounts that they may have. If they have them, identify who they are and the people that they're associated with. Also, I know this is something that people like to shy away from, but when you look at the individuals that they have, a lot of the times they're not wearing uniforms like the military or law enforcement, but they have a uniformity to the way that they look. And so if you can identify the way that they look as you go through and move through the campus, other shooters may have a similar look or dress to the way that the people that they've either eliminated, the threats they eliminated, or the people they've caught. So again, this comes down to information sharing. Now, this is where this is also improving, is that active shooter response has improved, and the times have improved, but also the communication of what is important. And this is an ongoing thing. They have to continuously update each other on what they've seen and what they're seeing, so that other officers can be aware of that as they're moving through to clear, and also bringing people out. Because it's also the case where we've had shooters milk themselves into and secrete themselves into the people who are sheltering in place, so they can exit with them. So that's another thing that law enforcement has to take into consideration here.
Bernard, this is something we're looking at, of course, at these images, and a lot of them where we're seeing whether they're faculty, students, people obviously on their cell phones, kind of standing around the perimeter, just watching and waiting. I know that classes have been canceled. At what point does law enforcement determine, okay, this scene has been deemed safe and students can return to campus, to classes, to, I guess, theoretically, to as normal a life as possible? Is that days? Is it weeks? And how is that determined?
They want to get that done as soon as possible, obviously. They're doing this in a grid type thing where they have buildings that are clear. They're probably leaving officers behind to make sure nobody re-enters any of the spaces that have been cleared. So they meticulously go through by sections and sterilize the entire campus. And they might change that footprint depending on more information that comes in. But until they hit every facility, every access tunnel, for example, obviously universities have a lot of their infrastructure underground in tunnels, for example. They have to deal with all of that. They will be leaning on the people that own that campus, say it's the maintenance personnel, that really have immediate access to closed or utility spaces and have an immediate knowledge of all the spaces that have to be addressed. But they'll be doing this in sections. They will leave people behind to make sure there's no reentry. They'll be meticulous. That could take some time. They're not going to feel the ability to say all clear until they know about these two shooters. That's really what's going to push it. If they feel they discover something in their investigation that says that it was limited to these two. If not, they're going to continue with a broader search and investigation. They could say something like the campus is safe, but they're not necessarily going to jump to we are safe.
And obviously one of those shooters, we believe, allegedly is in custody right now, being interrogated at this very moment as law enforcement tries to piece this all together. Bernard, Jonathan, we appreciate you both and the insight and sticking around. Thank you.